America's beverage companies are investing in America. We're American companies, making American products with American workers in America's hometowns. We're local bottlers and manufacturers, operating in all 50 states, employing more than 275,000 Americans in good-paying jobs, delivering for the nation, because we believe in the promise of America and the people who make it great. Learn more at wedeliverforamerica.org. Paid for by the American Beverage Association.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive, America's #1 motorcycle insurer. Everything is more exhilarating when you're on your motorcycle, just like your bike is more protected when you choose Progressive Motorcycle Insurance. They offer coverage for your bike, starting as low as $75 per year. And they keep things affordable, with discounts like paid in full, multi-policy, and responsible driver. So raise your kickstands and get to quoting at Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. $75 premium is for state minimum coverage. Not available in D.C. Discounts not available in all states or situations.
Mic check. 1, 2. Are we recording? Hi, I'm Michelle Bernstein, an award-winning chef, restaurateur, and mom. I have a lot on my plate, including my psoriatic arthritis symptoms. That's why I was prescribed Cosentyx. It helps me move better.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for people 2 years of age and older with active psoriatic arthritis. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some were fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your rheumatologist about Cosentyx.
Duke fans, welcome to episode 739 of the DBR podcast, the Duke Basketball Roundup. I'm Jason Evans, joined by my buddy Donald Wine. We're recording, Donald. It is 8:45 on Thursday evening. As we speak, a gentleman by the name of Cooper Flagg is playing in his first NBA Summer League game. I missed the first couple minutes of the game. I went ahead and turned it on. He had a steal. He had a dunk. He had a turnaround fadeaway off of a rebound. He then had a 3-point play. Like,
mm-hmm. I'm watching right now. I will say this,
Cooper
Jason.
Flagg things. He's doing Cooper Flagg things.
Yeah, it's also like an ACC fest, right? Like you have on one side, you have Matthew Cleveland is on the Mavs. You got RJ Davis on the Lakers. The Lakers are being coached this summer by Lindsey Harding. So it's a nice little smorgasbord of ACC former players and greats as well. But yeah, the focus is on Cooper, and it's funny. Cooper is being paired up. He's matching up against Bronny James.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic when you consider the fact that Bronny is 7 inches shorter than him. So that's your point guard, ladies and gentlemen, Cooper Flagg.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, my hot take on all of this is Summer League is meaningless.
Summer League is meaningful for the guys who are trying to get a spot.
Right.
For the Cooper, do not look at this. We're not let's put it this way. We're not going to be over analyzing Cooper Flagg's Summer League tape. We're just not going to do that. No. There's no reason to. But exactly. For these guys that are trying to make a roster spot, it absolutely is important. And some of these guys are trying to play. Nembhard is a guy who's performing pretty well so far.
By the way, Tyrese Proctor had his first Summer League game earlier today. 13 points, was hitting some nice 3-pointers and stuff. Looked very good. Looked like he deserves perhaps that contract that Cleveland gave to him. Well, I just said Summer League's meaningless. Now, stop it, Jason.
All right. He's getting the NBA buzz, right? Like, NBA, like the NBA social media accounts were tweeting out Tyrese Proctor plays and tweeting out that's number 24, right? He's got his number and everything. So again, these are the first steps for them. They get to get that feeling of walking into an NBA-ish arena. It's in Vegas, so it's not NBA arena, but getting that kind of feel about a game and learning that for the first time. There's going to be some stumbles during Summer League. That's what this is for. So that comes, the fall when they get to preseason, they'll be ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's get to a little bit of news. We got couple items, then we're going to get in the back half of this episode to more results from the survey. Item number one, Cooper Flagg has been named the ACC Male Athlete of the Year. He is the 72nd person to win the Anthony McKelvin Award, which is given to the best male athlete in the ACC conference. He is, by the way, the 17th Duke student athlete to receive the award. There have been more Dukies to win this award than any other school. UNC's won it 15 times. He's also the 12th men's basketball Dukie to win the award. That is the most of any team out there and all the teams around. I really impressive thing that he did this. Congrats to him. Donald, I just want to really quick go through all the Dukies. We said there's 17 of them. All the Dukies who have won the Athlete of the Year award in the ACC. And for a while it was really only male athletes, and then they added a female Athlete of the Year award. So some of the names I'm going to give you are women. And they, by the way, of course, deserve to have their award. All right, so the other Dukies. 2019, Zion Williamson did it. Laken Tomlinson did it in football in 2015. Becca Ward did it in fencing in 2012. Ned Crotty, I remember that name, Ned Crotty in lacrosse 2010. Really one of the greatest lacrosse players in Duke history. Lindsey Harding did it for women's basketball 2007. JJ Redick 2006. Alana Beard. Oh, man. Alana Beard had two of these, Donald. She was Athlete
quad
of the Year. What's that?
Class 2004. Greatest class ever.
She was the Athlete of the Year in the ACC twice, 2003 and 2004. That's amazing. Shane Battier did it in 2001. Elton Brand in 1999. Vanessa Webb, women's tennis player, did it in 98. Christian Leitner did it twice, in 91 and 92. If you told me that Christian won Athlete of the Year in 92, I wouldn't be surprised. The fact that he won it also in 91 does surprise me a little bit. Clarkston Hines, who I knew. I knew Clarkston a little bit when I was at Duke.
That's
Football
a legend,
wide receiver.
man.
What'd you say?
I said that's a legend. I had to. Do you know how much game tape that I would splice from Clarkston Hines to what was then a very terrible Duke football team to kind of show like this is what you need to be aiming to do. He was the legend of Duke football for a very, very long time.
So he won it in football in 1990. Danny Ferry won it in 88 and 89. Duke had the ACC player of the Athlete of the Year in 88, 89 with Danny Ferry, Clarkston Hines in 90, and then Christian Leitner in 91 and 92. That is an outrageous run. That is ridiculous that we did that. I'm sure that every other school of the conference was incredibly pissed off. Prior to Danny Ferry, you got to go back all the way to 1964 to Jeff Mullins, to the previous. So Duke went 24 years between ACC Athlete of the Year. Art Heyman won it in 63. Mike McGee in football won it in 1960. Dave Syme, who played both men's basketball and track and field, won it in 1956. And then in 1954, the very first year that the ACC gave an Athlete of the Year award, it was given to Joe Schenkel of Duke, who is a track and field athlete. That's an amazing, amazing list of people who had a huge impact on the conference. Just huge, and hats off to Cooper Flagg. Think about all the great Dukies in the past. I named some of their names, but there are a lot of great Duke players who never won ACC Athlete of the Year. All sports. You heard me. I named a fencer. I named lacrosse. Women's golf. You name it. All sports. Cooper Flagg Athlete of the Year. Wow.
I was going to mention the number of athletes. Forget basketball, but just across Duke sports, all those national championships that this school has earned, and there's so many of those athletes that are not on that list. So for Cooper to make it onto that list, first of all, it's well deserved. I can't think this is, Jason, you and I watch a ton of sports. We had a lot of great teams do a lot of great things in many different sports. I cannot name anybody who was better for their sport or for their team than Cooper Flagg was for Duke basketball this year. And that's not to slight anyone else. That's just how good that this man that was currently on our television was for Duke this year. It's a great, great accomplishment.
And by the way, if you're wondering about the competition, so the voting wasn't even close. Cooper got 41 votes. Cam Ward came in second. He had 4 votes. And then a wrestler from NC State, Vincent Robinson, who is an NC State wrestler, had 3 votes. But I mean, this was
Cam Ward, who was second for the Heisman. So Just put that.
Exactly. Think about that, right?
Could have
Cam
won
Ward
the
came
Heisman, Cam. So
second in the Heisman voting, also came in second in the ACC Player of the Year voting to Cooper Flagg. That's, yeah. Wow. 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 All right. So the other item we have before we take a break and then get to the survey is Jon Scheyer. Coach Scheyer conducted a news conference, his summer news conference this week. Had a lot of really, really interesting things to say about the makeup of the team and issues involving Duke basketball and how he feels about the loss to Houston and the health of the players, all kinds of stuff. Donald, what was your biggest takeaway from Shirer's press conference just a couple days ago?
I think he really emphasized how quickly he had to think about this next year.
Yeah. Oh my! I felt sorry. I really felt sorry for when you started talking about that.
Yeah, when someone asks like, "Hey, did you get a chance? Like, do you review a tape after the last game of the season, knowing that that's not going to be your team?" And he was like, "Look, on Monday, I was having meetings with the players that are coming back. And Monday was the day of the national championship game. They basically
Yeah.
came back to Duke, and he started having meetings. We talked about in the spring. We talked about how the banquet was canceled because they basically said we're too knee deep into preparation for next year, that there's no time to really celebrate this year's team. And that's, again, we they did it in other ways, but they were very, like, there was no break for them. And that we've talked about it with some of the coaches that have been on this podcast before, and they have all lamented at the lack of those breaks that used to exist in the calendar are now gone because of NIL, because of the transfer portal. I think the other thing that was interesting was he mentioned that the only day that it matters for the transfer portal is the very last day of the transfer portal, because
I
he's like,
cracked up when he said that. I thought that was so funny. He's so
yeah,
right.
because he's like, everyone is being talked to. All of our guys are being talked to. And you don't know what any of them are going to decide until that deadline passes and they can't enter the portal anymore. And so I think that was, again, it, for a team that lost five guys to the draft, or at least, I'm sorry, five starters got drafted. You had Cedric Howard, who committed and then stayed in the draft. You had guys who were flirting with the draft or with transfers and things like that, and we really, like, they fought to keep everybody. They fought to get Dame Sar. They fought to get, keep some of these recruits happy, and that was a full-time job. And I think we talked to the show that about that 50-day rule that they've kind of instituted. They said we're going to go hard for 50 days. 50 days transpires with the last day that guys can come out of the draft and remain eligible for college. And they're like, after that, we can kind of then focus really on this year's team. And before that, it's all about building. It's about the portal. It's about recruiting. And so I really feel for the coaches then that they have to really get into that. And there's really not a lot of time for them to have the mental break that they need to remain sharp. The last thing Jason and I would mention is the one thing that wasn't asked that I would love to get the answer for from Jon. We talk so much about how much, players improvement and what they need to do to improve. We on this
Yeah.
show talk about the players and, hey, here's what they did good, here's what they can improve on for next time, both individually and as a team. I'm wondering, in his, now entering his fourth season, what he has done to kind of continue to improve himself. We have seen that the coach we saw last year, the Jon Scheyer we saw last year, was a much better coach than the first year of Jon Scheyer. And that's just natural because he's a competitor. He wants to win. He wants to continue to constantly evolve. And I'm wondering what that process looks like for him amidst all of this other stuff that I just talked about that they have to also deal with. So that would be something that, one day if I got to ask him that, I would wonder what that improvement looks like for himself, for his coaching staff, so that they can also get better to be able to serve the team as they, again, continue to improve.
Well, I don't know that it directly addresses what you're saying there, but he did mention at one point, and I thought this was one of the more interesting moments of the press conference. He said they had a staff. He was out talking about the fact that, his staff has been in transition, that he's got all these new people on the staff and things like that. He talked about how Chris Carrawell is like a rock. It's so great to have a guy around who's been around a long time, who he knows he can count on and such. But he said they had a staff meeting recently, Jon said, where they sat down and tried to figure out what is next. What is the next big change coming to college hoops? What happens with the NIL, with the portal, with all that stuff, with the changes that have happened just in the past few months with the house settlement and the such, and the new clearinghouse that there is for NIL agreements, all that kind of things. But it showed me that he and the staff are really thinking ahead, trying not to be surprised, trying to be prepared for anything. It sounds to me like it was sort of a brainstorming session. Like, okay, give me your craziest ideas of what comes next for college basketball and how does Duke adapt to that. And I loved hearing him talk about that. You mentioned the very funny line he had about the transfer portal and the only day that matters being the last day. He gave that answer when he was talking about Isaiah Evans.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's clear that Jon said that he and Isaiah had a lot of conversations. There was a lot of talk, and it's clear, I think, that Isaiah was maybe eyeing the NBA draft and maybe eyeing the transfer portal and maybe eyeing coming back to Duke. I bet it could have been like 33,
Well,
33. Yeah,
I would say he definitely was eyeing the draft, right? Because he tested the water. So we know that. I think the question is, was he eyeing the portal as well, or was the portal eyeing him? I took it from Jon to say that the portal was eyeing him.
Yeah. And then the other stuff that I thought was really interesting, just very quickly, I loved him talking about the Boozer brothers and Nick Hemenia and saying that they are winners. They are guys who have just consistently, again and again, won at every level they've been at, and that he thinks that will continue. He talked about, the importance of positional size in his new players and in the players he brought back. And we talk about it all the time in this podcast. Like, you ain't 6'4", you ain't 6'5", you ain't 6'7", you ain't a part of this Duke team. And then he also said he's been very impressed watching Dame Sarr play in the ACB, in the Spanish league that he was in. Because Jon pointed out, and I hadn't really even thought about this. Jon played in that league. Jon Scheyer, when he injured his eye and the NBA wasn't really going to be an option for him, he went and he played overseas for a little bit before he came and joined the Duke staff. And he played in the ACB. And he's like, I was 22 and Dame was doing it at age 18. And Scheyer was like, that's really impressive. Scheyer was like, the ACB is serious. And it's really impressive that Dame was able to do what he could do. And then the last thing I want to touch on, Donald, I forget who it was. Someone asked Jon Scheyer about jersey retirement. I thought this was a great question and a really important one because Scheyer said, Duke's like the hardest place on earth to get your jersey retired. You have to win like National Player of the Year. You have to break a national record, something like that. Win, huge accomplishment, and you have to graduate. And Scheyer came out and he said, in this era, that's functionally impossible. It's just not going to happen that a guy is going to stick around long enough and have a career good enough and also graduate. And he said they need to evaluate it. They need to think about maybe revising their criteria at Duke. I mean, it sounds to me like he's sort of opening the door to Zion, to Cooper, to Elton Brand, Jahlil Okafor, Marvin Bagley. I mean, I don't know. I don't know all those guys. That's a lot. But if you tell me that Duke's going to open the door and find a way for a Cooper or a Zion or an Elton, who each won National Player of the Year, like run away, like it wasn't, it was very clear who the National Player of the Year was. I could definitely see those three guys getting their jersey in the rafters if you revise that graduation requirement a little bit.
I think, Jason, that was a great question. It was a great answer by him. It could be an entire podcast episode of us debating back and forth how that would work, who would be the guys you really consider. I
agree.
Think a lot of people would start with Kyle Singler, who did graduate, right?
Yep.
Like, so you have those sort of questions and the guys from maybe your era that
I was going to say Mark Aller. The fact that Mark Aller's not in there is a little bit like, really?
Right. But, those sort of guys from, basically the 80s, 90s, even this, 78 crowd.
Jim Spanarkel.
Those type of guys who really have a good case, but it's not a great case when you consider who is in the rafters, right? And then you kind of have that. You also don't want to be Carolina, who honors / retires everybody. And we are still
an academic institution. I sounded like I was sort of wishing for a change in the requirement. I'm not sure I'm there yet. I think graduation does matter. It matters a lot. So I'm torn on all of this. So
it could also
don't know how
be
you handle it.
Well, also like it could be, and again we're getting into the conversation a little bit, but I want to nip it. But a Carlos Boozer or a Will Avery. Like Will Avery maybe doesn't deserve, maybe is not a guy that you would consider for retiring a jersey, but the reason why an Elton Brand hasn't had his up there is because he didn't graduate. But what if he graduates, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, right? Graduation is not a finite number. You can graduate when you want. Carlos Boozer took him 20 years, but he graduated.
Yep.
Do you revisit it at that time? If it's like, hey, Elton, all you need to do is take these couple classes, and we're going to put your number in the rafters next year. Maybe that might encourage some of these guys. Again, I think that might be part of that conversation that he's referring to.
Yeah. I don't know. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. On the other side, more answers to our survey. Your answers. What am I saying? More results to your answers. That's what I wanted to say, Donald.
We're going to talk about the survey.
Yes, the survey and how much you hate the Tar Heels. That answer coming up.
Summer is here. More sun, way more heat, more time to do all the things that make summer so special. And the number one thing you don't want to be doing all summer? Spending hours cooking. That's where Factor can help. Factor's chef-crafted, dietitian-approved, and delicious meals are ready in just 2 minutes, taking the hassle out of eating well.
Boy, that's right, Donald. Not only are they quick to heat up, you have a lot of options. You're not stuck with the same leftovers for the entire week. With 45 weekly menu options, you can pick gourmet meals that fit your goals. And if you're someone who does meal prep for the week, Factor's variety of options means you can have something different every single day, and you don't have to cook. Now you can get outside and enjoy some time with your loved ones.
So get started at factormeals.com/DukeBB50 off. Use that code DukeBB50 off to get 50% off, plus free shipping on your first box. Again, that's factormeals.com/DukeBB50 off for 50% off, plus free shipping. Once again, factormeals.com/DukeBB50 off.
Shopping is hard, right? But I found a better way. Stitch Fix online personal styling makes it easy. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And he sends just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and styling tips. I keep what works and send back the rest. It's so easy. Make style easy. Get started today at stitchfix.com/Spotify. That's stitchfix.com/Spotify.
We're back from the break. Jason and Donald here on the Duke Basketball Roundup. Survey time. Survey says we hate UNC. So we're going to get to a few more questions from our survey. Donald, we're saving the questions about the current state of college basketball, NIL, the portal, and all that kind of stuff. We're going to save those for another episode because that's a whole discussion.
It's a whole discussion. In fact, if there's news that comes between now and then, don't worry about it. We'll talk about that later. That is going to be its own show.
Yeah, there's plenty to chat about, but we're going to get to some other survey results. I'm going to start with this. The question was, those damn Tar Heels, I hate them. I enjoy it when, and then you guys filled in the blank, and 43.3% of you said you enjoy it the most when UNC is terrible and we get to beat them easily. 8-20 forever is what you said. 43% of you want UNC to be awful when we beat them. The next highest at 30%, and I'll go ahead and tell you that this is what I voted for. 30% of you said you want the Tar Heels to be a real contender, a good team, and the game is like a toss-up. Now, I know there's peril in that answer. There's the chance of losing in that answer. But I say it is sweeter when you beat them when they're good than when you beat them when they're bad. And then the next two answers, that the Tar Heels are good, but not like top 10 good. You know, your Duke's pretty likely to win, but it isn't a sure thing. 20% of you said you like that as the answer. And then we had 6.1% to say, UNC's just okay. They're decent, but they're not that good. Duke's favored by about 10 to 15 points. Donald, where'd you fall on this question?
You already know where I fall on this question. 8-20 is too high for me. I want the if I root against UNC in everything they do. I root against them in academic debates. If they were facing an ant colony, I would root for the ant colony. If the fate of the world rested on the Tar Heels winning one basketball game, it's been a nice time on this earth, but we're gonna have to consider going to Mars. I don't care about them. I hope they lose their inter squad scrimmage, whatever they call it over there, the Midnight Menace. I hope they lose that every single year. That is how much I hate the Tar Heels. It's very equal to Ohio State. Ohio State, if Ohio State, if the fate of the world feels Space Jam and Ohio State was Michael Jordan, then we had a nice life, ladies and gentlemen. We're all going to be Monstars living on the hill. That's just how it's going to work. So I'm one of those people. I don't like. I get the argument that UNC being good is good for college basketball, and to that I slightly agree. I guess I hope college basketball sucks every year because I hope UNC sucks.
I admire you. I like it. I like it. All right. Next question. Carolina is our rival, but the team we enjoy beating the second most is, and I was not at all surprised at this answer.
Not at all.
51, almost 52% of you said Kentucky. We hate Kentucky. After that, we got Maryland at 12.6%. Donald, I was very impressed that Duke hasn't played Maryland very much in the past, when did they leave the conference? About 10, 15 years
2014.
ago?
We haven't played them since.
Yeah. Yeah. But they are still second on our list of schools that we want to beat the most. 12.6% saying Maryland. After that, we get UConn at 11.1, Kansas at 5.2, NC State at 5. By the way, I think it's very interesting that the top 4 teams in this list of next to Carolina, who do you want to beat the most, are non-ACC teams. It's almost like we don't have much competition in the ACC. NC State is the highest rated of the non-ACC teams. They got 5% of the vote. Then Virginia at 3.4, Wake Forest also at 3.4, Michigan State at 2.4%, and Clemson at 1.8%. What did you think of these results, Donald?
I wasn't surprised. I think the fact that NC State, Wake Forest, UVA are lower is not necessarily indicative of the competition. As we have discussed, we have had some very good games, some very classic games against all 3 of those teams in recent years. I think it's more about we hate UNC so much that we don't necessarily care when those other 3 teams play us because it's not the same type of hate. In fact, in a lot of cases, it's not hate at all. It may be one-sided hate. Same with Maryland, right? Maryland, we hated them when we played them because they hated us. It wasn't because of anything they did. They didn't take our lunch money and we had to go, fight back. We were the ones that every single year I think when it comes to Duke, right? And all these teams on this list, all the teams that people list on the other list, we are their number one rival. Doesn't matter who they are. We can only pick one to be the one that gets the reciprocal hate, and that's UNC. Kentucky is right there. I would have picked Kentucky because also, like you said, we've played them recently. We play them every couple years in the ACC. I'm sorry, in the Champions Classic. So we get that opportunity every few years for that to be a big time game. And usually, because it's the beginning of the year and they're 2 blue blood programs, it is a top 5, top 10 matchup between teams. So it's really important for both teams. So I like the answers, but I get why some of these ACC teams are a little bit further down. The one thing, Jason, I did laugh at in some of the other category, one person put whoever is coached by John the Weasel Calipari.
Yes.
And so I get that. That's funny. And again, we're facing Arkansas this year. So whoever wrote that, I'm sure they're going to be glued in front of their TV on Thanksgiving night because that is going to be a game that is high on their list.
Yeah, some of the other comments that we got, because there was a space here where people could fill in other stuff. Someone said, choosing between Maryland and Kentucky, how does one choose between these two? And then we got a couple people who, even though the question specifically said, other than Carolina, who do you want to beat the second most? There are a couple people who are like, look, I can't pick anybody because Carolina's not on the list. There is no second place. The Heels are the entire list. We got several.
They said they're like Carolina's got other sports. We can beat them in those sports too.
Exactly.
I feel you on that. That's great. Again, beat them in everything. Everything.
And then there was someone who voted for NC State who wrote this. And NC State, if there's any, I can't imagine there's any NC State people listening, but if you're listening, I apologize in advance. The comment was "Moo you, Cow College, Tractor Town." I just cracked up at that. I was like, "Oh my god!" Really laying it on those poor NC State fans there, calling them "Moo you." It's just a lot of hate for a lot of other teams, especially Kentucky.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that is not a surprising one, but it's still interesting considering how few times we've played UConn over the years, that they are fairly high on this list because of the fact that when we do play them, it is, in Final Fours and national championships.
Well, I think that partially stems. Someone commented on this. They said, "I just want to beat whoever the other top team out there is."
Mhm.
And I think that's what it stems from. That UConn may not have won it all this year, but they literally won back-to-backs.
Right.
Duke, Florida, UConn. That's the entire list of back-to-backs in the modern college basketball era. So I completely understand why someone would say, "I want to beat a team like UConn," because that is a mark of success in this modern era.
And a lot of people have their thoughts on Danny Hurley and the fact that the chirping about, oh, well, we want to schedule something with Duke, but they won't call us back. That whole charade that was going on for a couple of months. I'm sure a few people are like, all right, set it up.
Yep.
Set it up.
Speaking of that, Donald, get to the next question.
Yeah, so that leads me to the next question, so beautifully, which is, which team would you most want to see Duke play in a home and home series? This is not a game in Madison Square Garden or a neutral site game. This is us going to their house and that team coming to Cameron one year after the other. And drumroll, Jason, no surprise, Kentucky is the team that people would most want to see play in a home and home. 28.7% of people picked that. UConn was next with 25.5%. And then others on the category, you got Kansas at 15.7%. That, Jason, would be the one that I want because the number one place I want to see outside, I've been to Cameron, a billion times, but the one college arena that I want to see is Fog Allen Fieldhouse. And so that would be.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. Yeah.
That would be amazing to set that up. And Jason, as we've heard, we've talked about on the show, we have heard that is something that is potentially in discussion, but again, we will see what the tea leaves read on that. Maryland at 6.2%, Michigan at 2.6%. And then you have teams like UCLA, Gonzaga at 7.6%, Florida, and Texas were the teams getting the majority of the other votes. Jason, you mentioned Kansas. I think we're in agreement there. But other than Kansas, were there any on this list that stood out to you?
No, I mean the ones the striking one to me, of course, is I desperately would love to see Duke play in Kansas. All of these would be really good, interesting matchups. I actually don't know about Maryland. I know they're high on the list. I know people, still care about beating them, as we discussed in the last question. I'm not sure that they're still that relevant to me. I very much agree with the folks who say whoever's dominant, I want to play the best, and that would, pretty consistently be a Gonzaga, a Kansas, a UConn, a Kentucky, teams like that. I know year after year, those teams are like always in the top 10, and that's the kind of team I want to play.
Yeah, there's also some other interesting ones out there that, again, I don't think are high on my list, but I'm like, yeah, sure, that'd be great. A team like Indiana, Tennessee. Again, Indiana's more about Assembly Hall and visiting, one of those type of arenas. Tennessee is a good one. St. John's, kind of renewing that series. Villanova, BYU. And then someone said, again, any team coached by Calipari. So I guess that means Arkansas is on the list. But again, that game that we faced them in Arkansas, that's the type of environment that we need to be playing more. And that's what Jon Scheyer has been scheduling.
Yeah, some of the other, one of the recurring themes I noticed, someone said, I'm adding Tennessee to the list. And someone said, I want to do SMU. Someone said, Iowa or Iowa State. And someone said, Wisconsin, University of Denver, Buffalo, San Diego State. If you're like, why those? Those were all people who said, I live there.
I live there, yeah.
I want a home and home so I can see Duke come to my home arena. So I cracked up at all of those. People I was reading some of the answers. I was like, the person who put University of Denver, I was like, University of Denver? And then I immediately went, oh, wait, I know what's happening here. And then they were like, I live in Denver.
I live in Denver. Another interesting one, Jason, again, it wouldn't necessarily be the team, but I guess the team kind of falls into it, would be Butler. Again, having a game at Hinkle Fieldhouse, a game in Cameron, Butler, of course, replaying the 2010 national championship game. And it's two small arenas. And, like we're kind of doing one with Army and going to a small arena where
Yeah.
you kind of get that powder keg. So that's, again, it's supposed to be an imposing environment or anything like that, but it's one that is an intimate setting, a cozy setting, but also one that involves some cathedrals of college basketball. That's what I care about. Seeing some of these great, great arenas that aren't Cameron Indoor Stadium, and to see Duke play in them would be even better.
All right, one more question here, buddy. Bring us home.
Yeah, one more question, and it's dipping into not necessarily NIL talk, but about Duke's future. And the question was, if I could wave a magic wand, Duke's future would be blank. And I don't think, Jason, there was any surprise here, but the overwhelming majority of you, 80.8%, say that Duke's future would be to stay in the ACC and let things ride out because it will always work itself out. Moving to the SEC or the Big Ten, we're both at 5.8%. Moving to the Big 12 was at 1.6%. Going independent in basketball, because we're Duke and we won't have to worry about anyone ducking us, is 3.4%. And then dropping out of Division I entirely, that answer drew 2.6% of the votes. So, Jason, I mean, I think their easy answer is to say to stay in the ACC. I think a more robust discussion that we could have down the line, and I think we've had it at times, would be if the ACC went away tomorrow, where would we go? Where would we want to go? I think that might be a better discussion later. But for this particular question, what did you think? I'm assuming you picked to stay in the ACC and let it ride out.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough one. I'm the guy who added it in. I'm the guy who wrote this one up, and I'm interested in seeing how people feel about it. But the problem with it is I don't know that the ACC can make it work. And if the ACC can't make it work, I think the Big Ten is the best solution for Duke. And I think, if the ACC implodes, I think Duke is going to survive. I'm glad that 80% of folks are like, yeah, let's stay in the ACC. I'm glad that, folks mostly agree with me that that's the ideal. I just don't know that ideal works out. And to be honest, this is the question that's sort of like, even though we're asking fans' opinions, I think all of us would say, or most of us, there's a small percentage of people who say, 2.6% said drop out of Division One. I think all of us would say, whatever major conference we can find that makes sense is where we want Duke to be. Right now it's the ACC, but we want to remain a major conference, a major player in football and basketball.
I think I agree with you, and I think the dropping out of D1, I could go on and on about how that would be a terrible idea for Duke. I think the one that would be most intriguing is the going independent route. It wouldn't make financial sense, but from a scheduling standpoint, I get that, let's see what Jon Scheyer can do with 31 games as opposed to 13. Like, dude, we're going to have some incredible games that he could schedule. But I think the problem is the money does not come with that. It's not going to be setting up all those things without the conference, paydays behind it.
And I think it would get to be a real challenge to schedule games in January and February, because you just have to find enough teams that can find a spot in there. There's just not that much space in the schedule unless Duke becoming an independent is part of a lot of other teams becoming an independent, and then you could put something together. I could see
a
team
or conferences end up with odd number teams where you have these buys that they have to take. But again, that requires a lot of moving parts.
Right. And we're getting into, pie in the sky, weird, who knows what kind of scenarios. I do think that because of the unique attraction of Duke basketball, Duke is better positioned than some other schools for a, massive implosion of the sport, or of, all of the NCAA sports. But it's not a day that I'm looking forward to. If you ask me, let's keep things the way they are.
Yeah.
With that, we're going to wrap it up here on the latest edition of the DBR podcast. He's Donald. I'm Jason. We'll be back in your feeds very soon. There'll be more news. I know it. There'll be more things to talk about. We got more survey results. Until then, here's the Duke Band playing us out and taking us home. If you haven't heard, Superman is awesome. We talked the other day.
I
before.
have heard that. My
Yes.
friend went to go see it, and he was like, "It's amazing." So
Yeah,
it's up my
I
list.
saw it on Monday, like shortly after we recorded,
Mhm.
and God, just it's a ton of fun. It's so funny. I at least a dozen times I was just laughing out loud in the theater. But the thing that makes it great is it is a really, really human, real, lived in kind of main character in Superman. This is the best Superman since Christopher Reeve, like no question about it. And I'm not talking about like the performance. I'm talking about the way the character is presented and the way James Gunn writes the whole story. His relationship with Lois, with Rachel Brosnahan, is
Mhm.
spot on and real. In fact, I've been saying to people, I feel like it's a good date movie. My wife wants to go see it because the these two characters just feel so honest. It's really it's delightful.
I will tell you, again, I've not seen it. I am looking forward to going to see it. I will not bring a date to that movie. That is not a date movie. Never in it. Like, ladies and gentlemen out there, if you are taking someone on a date, do not take them to see the story of like the strongest superhero that ever lived. Like, don't do that because you're gonna come out the theater and everybody wants to be Superman. There is the reason why there's only one. You can't. It's not you. You don't want to be compared to that. That is no first dates. No. I guess if you're married, sure. But Jason, I promise you, you're gonna be asked to do some Superman tasks around the house. And if you don't get them done, she's gonna be like, "Well, Superman would get them done." You never want that to be used against you.
Set a low bar, huh? That's what you're saying. Set
The
a low
low
bar.
bar.